So let's start. So the first problem is fairly easy. It's basically really just read off the chart, right? It's a very simple warm-up problem. So what did you guys get? Just shout out the answer. Or type it out if you don't want to shout. D. Okay, yep, that's right. The answer is D, exactly. The easiest way to see this is just to notice that each of these tick marks represent 0.25, right? Because there's 4 spaces or 4 arcs that's marked by these 3 ticks. So each of these is 0.25, which means that since the arrow is between the first and second tick, it must be between 10.25 and 10.5. So it's 10.3, right? Fairly easy. All right, problem 2, a little bit more challenging, but nonetheless a warm-up problem. What did you guys get for this one? Any thoughts? B, okay, someone said B and someone said C. Okay, well, does anyone want to share their solutions? The person that got B, that is Zion, do you want to share how you got this answer?
I multiplied 8 and 0.25, and I realized that it was 2, so I times those two together. It was 4, and using some knowledge, I deducted that, well, if it was, first I divided 4 by 0.1, and I got 0.4, and then I divided by 0.025, and I just evaluated, and the closest number was 1/4.
Okay, great. Yep, that's exactly the right thought process. Another way you could think about this is to write the decimals in fractions, because that actually makes it really easy too. So you could multiply 8 by 1/4, right? Because 0.25 is 1/4. And then you multiply by 2 and you multiply by 1/8, because 0.125 is 1/8. So when you do that, you'll get 2 times 2 times 1/8, which is 4/8, which is actually 1/2. So yeah, I think you had the right thought process. Like you multiply by 8 by 0.25, and then you multiply by 2. But I think you made a little arithmetic mistake somewhere in the end. But that's okay though, because you have the right ideas. So just make sure you're a little bit more careful next time, okay? But good job nonetheless. So yes, the answer is C in this case. Are there any questions about this? No? Great. Okay. So now let's look at question 3. This one is actually very easy. What did you guys get for this one? Okay. Someone said D and someone said B. Wow. Okay, we get some very conflicting answers today. Sheldon, you wrote D. Do you want to share with us how you got D?
So I simplified 2/20th to 1/10, and I simplified 3/30th to 1/10, and I added all of them, and I got basically 0.3, which is D.
That's exactly on point. Yep. This problem might look a little intimidating with all these different fractions, but if you simplify it by canceling the common factor in both the numerator and denominator, for example, 2/20 is 1/10, right? Because 2 is a common factor. So if you do that, it's actually a really easy addition problem, right? Just 1/10 plus 1/10 plus 1/10. So that's 3/10. And that's clearly just 0.3. So the answer is D. Correct. All right. All right, the last question. This one isn't really hard, right? Because like no matter if you know how to solve this or not, you can always just count it. But there is actually a way to make this really easy. So first I want to hear how you guys solve this. What did you guys get for this one? Okay, everyone is saying B. Okay, Liming, you haven't talked a lot today. How did you get B? Let's hear your thought process.
I got B because if you count the black and white and subtract the black, you will always get 1. So if you count all the black squares outside, you will get 8.
Okay, that's very much correct. But I mean, I guess a way to rephrase what Leming just said is that if you look in terms of each, uh-oh, my bad, guys. If you just look in terms of each row like this, you'll notice that actually in each row, there's exactly one more black square than there is a white square, right? For example, look at the first row, there's 1 black square, 0 white squares. So there's 1 more black square, right? If you look at the second row, there's 2 black squares, 1 white square, so there's 1 more black square, right? The third row, 2 white squares, 3 black squares, so that's 1 more black square, right? So each row that you look at, there's exactly 1 extra black square that there is white squares. So all you have to do is just count the number of rows and multiply by 1, right? Because each row has 1 extra black square. So there's 8 rows, meaning there's 8 extra black squares. So it's B. So this problem isn't really hard, again, because like even if you just count it brute force, you'll still get the right answer. But I think problems like these give you a chance to be not only creative and insightful, but in fact, if you see these like little insights and little tricks, these little shortcuts, it could save you quite a bit of time, which is always helpful. But anyways, let's move on to the next 4. I'll give you guys like 7 or 8 minutes to solve these, and then we'll discuss them together. And if you solve them before time is up, just let me know so I can keep track of our progress as a class, okay? Go ahead. Hey, how are we all doing? Are we pretty much done? Let me know where you are, like which problem you're working on. Done. Good job, Jasper. Okay, we're gonna wait like 1 more minute and we're gonna start, okay? Let me know if you need extra time, because based on what I'm seeing, I think a lot of people are done, so. All right, let's take a look at these. So the first question, it looks very complicated, but it's actually just a little trick on angles. Who has an answer for this? Okay, Jasper says C. Does anyone else have an answer? C. Okay. I think most people are saying C here. And that's right, the answer is C, because all you have to do for this one is notice that A and B are pointing to 160 and 20, right? So that must mean that angle ABD here is 140 degrees, right? But then they're telling you that they're telling you that CBD is a right angle, right? So this is a right angle, so it's 90 degrees. So that means since ABC plus CBD is equal to 140, that must mean that ABC is 140 minus a right angle. So it's 140 minus 90, which is 50. So the answer is 50, which is number C, or I guess letter C, sorry. Yep, Jasper, that is exactly correct. Now let's look at the second question. Who got an answer for this one? This one is slightly more challenging. E. Okay. Does anyone else have an answer? Okay, someone said D. Anyone else? Bella, do you have an answer for this one? Okay. Lemming, do you have an answer for this one? Okay, that's okay. All right, okay, let's take a look at this. So, the person who got E, why don't you tell us how you solve this question? I think that's Jasper. Do you want to tell us how you solve this?
Well,
Feel free to
Uh,
annotate the board too if you need it.
okay.
No, you can keep talking. I'm just saying that you can use the whiteboard to assist you. Okay, so Jasper's writing 0.8. And then what? 0.04. Okay. Then he divided it by it. Okay. Yeah, that looks right, except, I mean, you got the right answer, right? The answer is E, but the only thing is that the process isn't quite correct. I mean, you got the right answer, but the thing is that if you raise 0.2 to the third power, it's actually equal to 0.008, right? Because you have to account for the fact that there's a decimal. And then similarly, if you raise 0.02 to the second power, you actually get 0.0004, right? Because one way I guess to think about this is to count how many decimal places there are, right? So for example, if you look at the 0.2, you see that it's one decimal place after the 0, right? So that means if you raise it to the third power, you're gonna have 3 decimal places after the 0. So that means it's 008, right? And then if you raise 0.02 to the second power, which has 2 decimal places after the 0, it's gonna have 4 decimal places after the 0, after you raise it to the second power. So it's 3 zeros in the 4. And then when you divide it, you end up with 22. So yes, that is the right answer, but just missed a couple decimal points. Yep, no worries though. But another way you can solve this actually without worrying about all this decimal points is to convert it to fractions, right? So what's 0.2 as a fraction? It's 1/5, right? It's 1/5. So you divide that, I mean, you raise that to the third power. And then what's 0.02 as a fraction? It's 1/50th, right? It's like this. So now if you do a little fraction manipulation, and the way you do this is that you raise this to the third power, and then you multiply by the reciprocal, right? Because when you divide by a fraction, what you're really doing is that you're multiplying by the reciprocal. Yeah, that's okay. I mean, everyone has their own way of doing this, but I'm just showing you another way you could do this, right? And again, you're dividing by 1/50th. So that's equivalent to multiplying by the reciprocal, which is 50 over 1. So when you do that, you get 50 squared over 5 cubed, which is 2,500 divided by 125, and that's equal to 20. So either way you do this, you should get the answer 20, but there's actually 2 different ways that you could solve this question. Are there any questions, comments about this question? No questions? All right, okay, now let's look at the next one. An estimation question. Who got the answer for this one? B. Okay, Jasper says B. Anyone other than Jasper have an answer? Lemming, did you solve this question? Okay, that's okay. Okay, Zion got B. Sheldon, did you solve this question? You did, right? You said you got B. Okay. Hey, Sheldon, do you want to tell us how you solved this question? Just feel free to unmute. Yeah.
Okay. So I estimated basically, so I turned 2.46 to 2.5, and I multiplied it by 8, and I got 20. And then I added 5 plus 5 equals 10, and then I multiplied 20 by 10, and I got 200, which is B.
Exactly. So I think some people were a little intimidated by this question because you see all these numbers, but you know, like when you see the word closest, that's telling you that it's an estimation question, right? So you don't have to look at all these numbers. So what you would do is that you would round these numbers to the nearest nice number you have, right? So 2.46, you would round it to 2.5, right? And then you would round 8.163 to 8. You would round 5.7 to 5 and 4.829 to another 5. So when you do this, you have 2.5 times 8, which is 20, times 5 plus 5, which is 10, which gives you 200. Yep, so exactly. And here's a little, I guess, crash course on rounding in case you need help. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the rule with rounding is that if it's below 4, so if it's 1, 2, or 3, or 4, you round it down, right? So for example, when you look at the 5.17 here, we rounded it down because 1 is lower than 4, right? So, and then if you have a digit that's 5 or greater, then you would round it up, right? So for example, here, when we rounded this for 6, you see that the 6 is greater than 5. So you would round up. So you get 2.5 as an estimate. Does this make sense to you guys? Do you have any questions about this? No? All right, okay, let's move on to the last question. Problem 8. Betty used a calculator to find the product 0.075 times 2.56. She forgot to enter the decimal points. The calculator said 19200. If Betty had entered the decimal points correctly, the answer would have been A, B, C, D, or E. Jasper says B. And okay, someone says C. Okay. Another B. Okay. The person who said C, would you like to tell us how you got your answer?
Well, I noticed how many digits were behind the decimal and I counted them up. It was 5. And if Betty had if Betty had put the decimals into calculator, we would just I don't know how to explain it, but like we would place the decimal at behind the 1.
Okay, I mean, I think you're on the right track here, Zion. Because you counted the decimals right. Exactly, there's 5. I'm not quite sure what happened in a later
Oh
step.
wait, I see the mistake. Oh
Right, yeah. Because
yeah,
you were like, if you move it 5 forward, you want to move it 5 back, right? So,
yeah.
but yeah, you got the right ideas. So I mean, good job nonetheless. But just to like rephrase, I guess, like the official solution, what you would do is, if you counted the decimal points up here like Xeon did, you'll see that there's 5 decimal points, right? So in other words, what she did is she multiplied the product by 10,000. I mean, not 10,000, 100,000, right? She multiplied the entire product by 100,000, and then she got 19,200. So that means to get the right answer, you have to divide it by 100,000. So that's 5 decimal points. So what you would do here is that right now the decimal point is right here, right? It's that dot after the 0. So you want to move it 5 places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here's your new decimal point. So the answer will be 0.192, thus B. Does this make sense to everyone? Are there any questions about this? Going once, going twice, speak now, or however, I mean, speak now. Are there any questions about this? No? Okay.
No.
All right. Now let's look at the next set. These are slightly more challenging. So I'll give you like roughly maybe 10 minutes to solve these. Again, let me know if you need a hint on any of these. And let me know when you're done with these questions too. So good luck. Okay, about 2 more minutes and we're gonna start talking. Hey, let me know if you need help on any of these, okay? I can give you hints. You don't have to just be stuck there. All right, guys, let's go ahead and start talking. Okay, so problem 9 is a little tricky because there's actually an outlier here that's not isosceles, but it looks isosceles. And in fact, I'm just gonna reveal to you which one it is just to save time. This triangle here is not an isosceles triangle. So if you look at it, it might look isosceles because you might think that these two sides are of the same length, but it's really not because the way you want to do this is that you want to actually calculate the side lengths, right? You can't just look at it because it's not drawn to scale. I mean, even if it is, it can be really tricky such that it messes you up and gives you the wrong answer, right? Because if you look at the side lengths, this one is 2 units, right? But what about this one? This one is not 2 units. You actually have to use the distance formula for this one. So this one, it's 1 plus 2 squared. So the distance is actually the square root of 5, which is just a little bit more than 2, right? It's slightly greater than 2, but a lot less than 3. So in this case, they look really similar, but numerically, it's actually not the same. So you have to be careful of that, right? So yeah, but I mean, otherwise that everything else is an isosceles triangle. So I mean, the answer should be 4. D, right? Because I mean, I guess another way you can see this is just to count it, right? This triangle, these two are clearly the same, right? It's both 1 squared by 2 squared. These two are clearly the same. These two are clearly the same. These two are also the same. And the way you would notice that is to evaluate the size here, right? Because this is a right triangle, right? That's a right triangle. And it has the lengths 1 and 2. So if you use the Pythagorean theorem, you get 1 squared plus 5 plus 2 squared, which is the square root of 5. And both of them are equal to the square root of 5. So,
Could I say something?
of course.
I'm just gonna annotate. So I thought this side and this side were like part of the triangle as well. So like I thought this was like 2 triangles. So that's why I put E instead of D.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I guess it could be confusing, but I guess you just want to
Yeah.
keep an eye out for the, these, right? Because like if it's 5 triangles, you want to keep that in mind. But I mean, yeah, I guess that you got it, then you technically got the right answer. It's okay, no worries. All right, question 10. What'd you guys get for this question? Okay, so I got a D and an A and an E. So that's a lot of different answers. Okay, well, I guess we have to choose different representatives for this, huh? Bella, you're up. You got A. How did you get your answer?
I counted.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of counting. Okay, all right. Who got B? Lemming, how did you get B? Lemming?
Wow.
If you do 7 times 8, it will be 56. Then subtract 60. Then you'll get a 4. Then you will get a 6. And then you count the days and you'll get B.
Okay. Okay, the person who got D, how did you get D? Is that Jasper or Zion? One of you guys. How did you get D?
I was on the right track, but I miscalculated a little. So I divided 60 by 70. Instead of 56, I got 49 because I just miscalculated. And so if it was 49, I thought I just misread 60 as 50, I think. So I got 49, so that would be 7 weeks, so it would still be Thursday. And so 49, 50 minus 49 would be 1, so I got Friday. But
Okay, I
I
see.
just misread something.
Okay, that's okay. But I mean, okay, so I'm listening to you guys talk, and a lot of you actually have the right idea, right? Because you're all thinking about it as multiples of 7, and that's the right track. Because the key here is to notice that 7 days after Thursday is another Thursday, right? Because 1 day after is Friday, Tuesday after is Saturday, 3 days after is Sunday, 4 days after is Monday, 5 days after is Tuesday, 6 days after is Wednesday, and 7 days after is another Thursday, right? But that means 14 days after Thursday is another Thursday. 21 days after Thursday is another Thursday. 28 days after Thursday is another Thursday. 49 days after Thursday is another Thursday. And 56 days after Thursday is another Thursday. At this point, you can just count the rest, right? 57 after Thursday is Friday. 58 days after Thursday is Saturday. 59 days after Thursday is Sunday. So 60 days after Thursday would be Monday. So the correct answer here is A. Whoever got this, congratulations. Everyone else, you were on the right track. It's just that this problem is pretty tricky in terms of counting. So you just have to be a little bit more careful, but good job nonetheless. All right, question 11. Did anyone solve this one? Bella, did you end up solving this? No? Okay. Okay. Someone says A, someone says E. Okay. I think in this case, the answer is E, right? And the way you would solve this is to compare 164 to a perfect square below it and the perfect square above it, right? So in other words, what you want to do is this. You want to look at 144 because that's the square root, that's the square of 12, right? 12 squared is 144, and that's less than 164. And the square root the perfect square that's immediately above 164 is 169. Now, if you take the square root of all three numbers, you would see that first one, 144, is the perfect square of 12. So that means the square root of 144 is 12. In the middle, you have the desired number, the square root of 164, and then the square root of 169 is 13 because the perfect square of 13 is 169. So therefore, if you set up an inequality like this, you'll see that 164 is greater than 144 and less than 169, which means its square root is greater than 12 and less than 13. So the answer is E. Are there any questions on this question? Nope. Okay. All right, let's look at the last question before I'll go to bed today. So suppose the estimated $20 billion cost to send a person to the planet Mars is shared equally by the 250 million people in the United States. That's very democratic. Then each person's share is what? Did anyone get an answer for this? Okay, so someone said E and someone said D. Okay, so one E and one D. I wonder which one is the correct answer. Are there any other answers? No? Okay, that's okay. So this one, honestly, it's not a lot of math, right? It's really just a play on words, and it's really just seeing if you understand the words million and billion. And I think the easiest way to do this is just to know your numbers, right? So I guess, first of all, let's just see this. So when you have 1,000, that's exactly 3 zeros after the 1. If you have 1 million, that's exactly 6 zeros after the 1. If you have 1 billion, that's exactly 9 zeros after the 1. And I guess another way you could remember this is to think, okay, what's after 1,000? 10,000. What's after 10,000? 100,000. What's after 100,000? I guess you could say 1,000,000. No one says that. So therefore you say a million, right? So 1,000 is a million. That's 6 zeros. So, okay, now you have 10 million and they have 100 million. And then you have 1,000 million. But I mean, that also sounds kind of weird, right? Like people say 100 million all the time, but no one really says 1,000 million, right? So that's where a billion comes from. And that's exactly 9 zeros, right? So then armed with this knowledge, you can see that $20 billion is really just $20,000 million, right? And then you divide that by $250 million. So the millions cancel out because that's just a trail of 6 zeros. So you're really just dividing 2,000 by 250. You can even cancel out the last zero. So it's 200 over 25, which is just 8. But of course, if you do that, you got to add the 0 in the end. So that'd be $80. So if you have everyone in the United States pay for this mission to Mars, everyone has to pay $80. Well, are there any questions about this question? Any last questions? No? All right, then, ladies and gents, that is all we have for tonight. And thank you very much for coming. We'll see you next week.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good
Thank
job.
you.
Good job, Linning. You're doing really good. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.